Support for Swan Song is brought to you by viewers like you. Thank you. Very soon after I launched the Swan Song project, I started hearing from a certain fandom who were looking forward to having their games covered. That fandom was the Hunter x Hunter fandom. It wasn't clear to me at the time, but it turns out no game system released since the WonderSwan has had more Hunter x Hunter video games released on it. That's right, the WonderSwan has a grand total of 4 Hunter x Hunter licensed titles on it, with both the Game Boy Color and original PlayStation tied for second place with 2 games each. So today it brings me great pleasure to finally give the Hunter x Hunter fans what they've been waiting for since day one. This episode is about Hunter x Hunter Ishi Tsugu no, which was released on June 1st, 2000, developed by Access, and published by Bandai. Access is a video game studio and pachinko machine controller software development company founded all the way back in 1991 by ex-employees of IGS, and existed until their bankruptcy in 2010. They worked on a bunch of really interesting games, such as developing the Last Bible series on Game Boy, the PC Engine versions of Wizardry 1-5, the PS2 versions of Ys 3 and Ys 5. They also developed 4 Hunter x Hunter games released on the WonderSwan. Access is not to be confused with another Japanese company called Access, which produced the NetFront browser, which could be embedded into games, was bundled with the PS2 modem in Japan, and was built into the PSP, Vita, DS, 3DS, Wii U, and Switch system software. They are also the rights holders to Palm OS, which powered PDAs and smartphones released between 1996 and 2007. So what's Hunter x Hunter anyway? Hunter x Hunter is a best-selling shonen manga series illustrated by Togashi Yoshihiro, which has been published in Weekly Shonen Jump since March of 1998. The series revolves around an elite class in this universe known as Hunters, which are essentially just gigachads who fit into one or more dictionary definitions of the word hunter. Treasure hunter? Check. Monster hunter? Check. Bounty hunter? You betcha. Not only do you need to qualify for a hunter's license through a brutal annual exam, but the more achievements you have across multiple hunting disciplines, the more stars you'll be awarded by the Hunters Association. The manga frames everything through the lens of the main character, Gon Freaks, and his pursuit to become a hunter, following in the footsteps of his father, who became a legendary hunter while Gon was growing up back at home, and ultimately setting out to reunite with his father. In October of 1999, Hunter x Hunter got its first anime adaptation, thanks to the folks over at Nippon Animation. That adaptation ran for 62 episodes, ultimately ending in March of 2001. Aside from some OVAs released throughout the early 2000s, it would see its second anime adaptation from Madhouse in October of 2011 and run for a whopping 148 episodes, ending in September of 2014. Hunter x Hunter is a huge deal in the manga world. It's the 26th best-selling manga series of all time, and people love to argue about whether or not the fact that it does unexpected things means it's subversive or a deconstruction of shonen tropes. Look, you'll just have to glance at my manga shelf and see how 2/3 of it is cooking manga to know that I'm not the right person to make that call. I've read or watched very little shonen throughout my life, and the genre just doesn't appeal to me at all, so please excuse if my knowledge on this series and its contemporaries is somewhat lacking compared to literally anyone who's ever opened an issue of Shonen Jump. Hunter x Hunter is perhaps most well known nowadays for its incredibly irregular release schedule, but as the series was still in its infancy at the time of the game's release, the manga's release cadence had yet to go completely off the rails. To place it in context, Ishi Tsugu no would have been released about a third of the way through the manga's run of the York New City arc, and it would have been released the week of the second to last episode of the 1999 anime's Hunter Exam arc. The timing of the game's release seems pretty deliberate, as the game straight up assumes you know how that arc ends, and if you don't, well, you'll find out within the first few minutes. I'm gonna do that right now, so this is your chance to peace out. Yeah, surprising absolutely no one, Gon gets his Hunter license at the end of the Hunter Exam arc. Who could have seen that coming? So naturally, he sails off with Killua to try and find his dad, and that's where we get the start of the game. You find yourself, as Gon, back in Dole Harbor, asking around for information about your dad, when you come across a certain informant who says she can give you information for a price. You don't have enough money to give her, so instead she asks you to work and complete quests in exchange for information about your dad. Pretty standard setup for this kind of non-canon anime game by now, really. After completing your first fight, you're given a Den-no Mobile, which is really just a fancy in-universe name for a cell phone. You can access the Den-no Mobile at any time by pressing the Y directional pad, and then the game prompts you to rotate your WonderSwan into the portrait orientation to use its UI. Somewhat reminiscent of Final Fantasy II, collecting keywords is a core mechanic of this game. As you talk to various characters and explore the world, you will come across numerous words in quotation marks. This indicates that they are keywords, which you can input into the search field on your Den-no Mobile and unlock their associated information that may or may not help you on your journey. Unlike Final Fantasy II though, which automatically tracks these keywords for you upon discovery, you're going to want to note these down somewhere, as they only become tracked after you've manually typed them in. The last part of the puzzle is the harbor, at which you can buy tickets to other locations in the game world once you've discovered their keywords and put them on your map. The manual actually outlines the game loop pretty well. You talk to people around town and you'll discover keywords to search for on your phone. By discovering keywords, you'll progress in-game quests along, discover new dungeons to explore, and uncover new locations to travel to in the harbor. And then at those new locations, the cycle continues anew. Because the entire game revolves around this keyword mechanic, this isn't the kind of RPG you can mindlessly brute force your way through the language barrier with. You do need to be comfortable with reading basic Japanese and know the Japanese syllabary to get anywhere in this game. The combat system in this game reminds me a lot of Ketchi's slot machine limit break from Final Fantasy VII. Whenever an enemy attacks you or you are attacked, instead of leaving the outcome entirely to chance, you are shown a roulette of options and you have to skillfully make the cursor stop on the option that is most favorable to you. For example, whenever you or one of your party members attack, there's a roulette with 3 options for miss, hit, and critical hit, and ultimately you can determine which one of those happens. That's pretty cool, but the combat sequences themselves are pretty boring all things considered. It's pretty universally agreed upon that this is the worst of the Hunter x Hunter WonderSwan games, and it doesn't start making a great impression either. Immediately upon starting the game, you're faced with absolutely tiny, anti-aliased cutscene text setting up the story, and the kanji in there are simply undecipherable blocks. If I wasn't already familiar with the terminology from watching parts of the anime in preparation for this episode, I would have had a pretty hard time following along with that opening. Luckily, that's not the case for all of the dialogue in the game, though it is using a mix of half-width characters and full-width kanji, which I always find really displeasing to read, but it's nowhere as bad as the cutscene text was. It feels kind of insane that this would ship right after Digital Partner. Both games revolved around the collection of glossary words baked into the game cartridge, and while Digital Partner was more of a spectacle due to its ridiculous connectivity story, it's pretty fair to say that Hunter x Hunter came out of this odd juxtaposition with a better game. But let's be honest, the bar was pretty low. Ishi Tsugu no ultimately really lacks a hook for me. The whole time I was finding words, putting them in my phone, and fighting people. I knew I was progressing something, but I never really knew what I was ultimately progressing towards or why I should care. Why should I trust that the game dangling a carrot in front of me, the information about my long-lost dad, which is a key plot point of the manga, would amount to anything in a non-canon spin-off game on a handheld system barely anyone owned? It feels like a set of half-baked gameplay systems wrapped in the flimsiest of narrative premises, and it didn't do much for me. I did look ahead at clips of future Hunter x Hunter games, and it does seem like Access learned a lot from this game and improved the games considerably, but this one certainly ain't it.